Next up, we have Maritime Blockchain Labs, presented by Deanna.
Hi, everybody. My name is Deanna MacDonald, and I am the CEO and co-founder of Blockchain Labs for Open Collaboration. Today, here representing our subsidiary, Maritime Blockchain Labs, which is funded by Lloyd's Register Foundation. So 90% of everything that you see in this room right now has come off of a ship at one point in time. All of our goods in the world are shipped around the world, except for we have not really paid attention to this sector at large. As a result, since the beginning of time, we've been shipping our goods with crude oil, bottom of the barrel, non-refined fuels. This is a major, major problem. In addition to premature deaths in coastal communities that are directly affected at 400,000 people a year, there's ocean acidification, global pollution levels, and as recently, there's been a global fuel contamination crisis that is causing engine failures at sea due to particulate contamination in the fuels. That is, for the first time ever, causing an actual change in the industry, an economic case and a business case for one to drive change. But at the core of all of this is no data, no traceability on fuels, and no decision support systems for fuel operators to be able to choose accordingly. Insurers will not insure your engine, which would cost millions of dollars at sea if you do not have a compliant chain of custody on your information. And regulators cannot regulate for better fuels or creating environmental regulations due to not having data. Therefore, we have created a solution on Hyperledger, a permission-based system on an open source technology that allows for the various stakeholders in the bunkering supply chain to submit the documentation, the lab results on the quality and quantity of fuel sources in the maritime sector. From the suppliers of the fuel itself, to the transfer at the terminal, to the barge that brings it to the ship, to onboard the ship, and to how it's consumed on the ship, to even the consumer goods itself. We're able to track and trace the quality and quantity documentation of this fuel. We can give that view and visibility to the authorities to be able to regulate as an emissions reporting and monitoring system. We can give that view to insurers to be able to pay out for compliance due to failures of engines. And we'd be able to create a bottom-up system for change, to actually change this industry and affect pollution levels. We've actually piloted this in the Port of Rotterdam, and we've done the world's first biofuels transaction in the maritime sector and traced it end-to-end in our system. This is huge. And we plan on rolling this out in several ports around the world. We've done this as well in the Port of Singapore and built this with our stakeholders. But what we are looking for from MIT Solve, in addition to the community at large to be involved in this project to help us out, to provide us with resources, is we're looking for introductions to coastal communities around the world, to port and regulatory authorities, to anybody that uses the system, and to fuel suppliers as well. And all in all, we would like to invite everybody to help create change in this space.
Thank you very much. Judges, questions?
What do you expect to do over the next 6 to 12 months?
It's a good question. Now that we've validated the technology and we've built it to be scaled, we plan on scaling it and implementing it a front-end system. So that's the technical side. But we are actually working together with the consortia of ports that we would like to implement this in for the regulatory side to prepare for the emissions IMO sulfur cap that's happening in 2020. But we need to also be able to build this out in different areas because we are collecting this data. We want to make an insurance product. We want to also be able to create the reporting systems. So that type of development work we're going to need some help with, and that'll be the applications that we can create. But for the very least, we need to be able to collect this data and start collecting this data. So it's getting troops on the ground in the ports and getting this system up and running to do so.
Does the port that the ports you need to work with, do they need to have a refueling capability?
Nope, it's quite agnostic to that. As long as we get the two endpoints, the fuel supply, as well as the shipping operators' information and data as the consumption levels, then we're able to trace it through ports, regardless if they're a bunkering port or not. But we did develop it in the world's biggest bunkering port in Singapore, so that's a good sort of starting source point.
Remaining questions? I have a minute and a half left. Heidi, and then Hari.
So I'm curious, you mentioned why MIT Solve, and those were fairly general statements. Can you be more specific about how we can help? It seems like you have a product. It seems like there's market demand. What can we actually do for you?
Well, we would like, at the first level, is advising and mentoring. We also haven't developed out and scaled technology on this level before. What we do is the upstream development and the validation and the securing of this technology. So we would like a lot of mentoring and advice on that. Introductions to high-level stakeholders that we don't necessarily have access to would be great as well. And likewise, we actually don't have that much capacity. We're a very lean team that's creating a lot of waves and creating some good changes here, but we also need to start getting more resources. So whether it's the MIT community itself or it's the community of others that we're able to bring forth. And then there's funding, simply put.
I have a last question. So you have 2 ports now that you're working with. How many ports do you think you need to actually have a full global picture of what's going on?
It would be ideal. We've been piloting with the 2 ports, which is nice, but it would be ideal in the next stage to at least have 4 or 5. We'd also like to start investigating the incentive structures and that they would allow, for example, priority docking if you had this chain of custody. That'll take some time as well. And then ideally, we would like that to be geographically representative as well, so not just in certain, we'd like it on multiple continents, so one in the Middle East, Asia, and furthermore in Europe.
Thank you very much.